Okay, so moving on, our next speaker is Rafiq. He is the Chief Urban Disruptor and a smart and sustainable city evangelist, urban tech mentor, and a keynote speaker from Smarter Urban IT and Strategies, Israel. And today he will be talking about securing the future of mobility for a post pandemic world. So, over to you, Rafi. Hello, Rafi. Can you hear us?
Yeah. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Hafiz, for the invitation. So I'm an architect and urban planner, and I'm the CEO of a boutique consultancy. We consult cities and governments in urban innovation and smart cities. And yes, I'll be talking about the what will mobility look like after the pandemic, or if I can make it more correctly, how will access be in post-pandemic world? Um, so just a few words about who we are. Again, we work in the connection or in the synergy between governance and policy and regulation and stakeholder engagement and tech. So we don't see one more important than the other. And we come from the right experience and the right professional aspects to do that. And so we have a wide range of clients in Israel, in Middle East, in East Africa, in Southern Europe, cities, governments, global organizations. We just finished a year and a half ago the first national smart city master plan for Rwanda, and we do quite a lot of work in these aspects. I want to start with current work we are doing for the city of Tel Aviv, which basically we were asked in May to create for them a strategy for post-pandemic urbanism, and we found out in very short time that this post-pandemic world will take a long time. Even if they'll define the vaccination, will take the vaccination on time and so on, we'll still have the recession and also the social and urban effects that come out of that. So it became a plan and scenario building for creating urban growth under COVID-19. And the first thing we did was try and understand what will a business as usual plan be, or what will cities be if there won't be a big change in policy and so on. And again, this is the usual way of doing business as usual. We look at different aspects and we see what will happen if there'll be layered crises or layered stresses. And that may lead in the end to municipal collapse of many cities. Basically, if we're talking about mobility, we are seeing a lower trust in public transport. We are seeing, even though there are lockdowns, right now we are in a lockdown in Israel. Even if there's lockdown, we still see a huge amount of cars on the street for those that have to go out, and because public transport is not there. And on the other side, we see also low accessibility due to low digital access to work and schools and so on. I have right now 3 kids at school from my house. I have to have obviously a strong broadband and so on. But what we do see more than anything else is that lack of a real start during and after COVID-19 will divide the city into two. The city for those that can, those that have sufficient digital access so they can work and learn at the same time, access to private vehicles or jobs that can enable you to work from far, large apartments or access to open space. And on the other side, you have cities for those that just are there because they have no other alternative. They can't go live elsewhere, and they don't have access to powerful broadband. Their work doesn't enable them to work from far, and they might not have private vehicles, and the apartments are not enough. So we do see this huge impact that is growing all the time. But we also see many people that actually are enjoying, even though they have problems, they don't want to go back to normal because suddenly they get to know their neighbors. They have a better feeling of community, and there's less pollution and so on. So on one side, there are those that don't have, but on the other side, we want to see a new normal. So there are four possible mobility scenarios. As you can see in my slides, none of them are good if you don't have a real integrated policy. One is no change, we'll just do whatever we did before. And the second scenario is that the governments are spending a lot of money and investing on leaving or getting out of this lockdown. And therefore, on one side, they are investing in innovation, but on the other side, they are investing in improving roads and so on. And that might even take people that used to use public transport back into their private cars. And on the other side, we're seeing urban changes where people said that if I can work from far, then why should I live in an expensive urban situation? Let's go and live in the suburbs, or let's go live in the country. And that immediately changes also the governmental spending to spending for public transport and for mobility between cities, and neglecting the investment inside the cities, again affecting the poor much more than the rich. And on the other hand, we do see, specifically in areas where there are strong communities and good planning, we see more people talking about hyper proximity. Yesterday there was a conversation about a 20-minute city like they're doing in Paris, having much more access to services within a 15 or 10 minutes radius or 20 minutes radius in walking and cycling. Now, each one of these need urban policies. They need aspects that are not only innovation, not only transportation. So I'm not going to go into this very much, but we created 3 different scenarios for the city, which right now the mayor and his team are deciding exactly which one they want to choose. But the first scenario is just going back to normal, spending a lot of money and policies on creating more reliable change and going back to the normal, investing in digital tools and in micromobility, but not really changing policy. The second scenario, the new city, is actually changing completely policies, going into innovation and new patterns of employment, Industry 4.0, prop tech, changing management and digital tools to manage cities differently, dynamic tools, and so on. The third scenario is going back into the community and saying that maybe the big city prospects, maybe going into big city policy is not the right thing, and let's go down into a stronger community and a stronger sense of place. Each one of them has mobility aspects to that as well. So we do need to develop and apply a new kinds of innovation. And these kinds of innovation basically will have to take care of the connection between tech policy and dynamic demands if we want to create a new normal, if we want to create a new normal for everyone. So we're talking about mobility, we'll have to talk about inclusive mobility, flexible, sustainable, and demand-based solutions. Now, the reason of that is because when we're talking about innovation in mobility, this is what we're thinking about. All these movies of the 90s and the past 20 years, talking about new kinds of hovering cars, autonomous vehicles, and again, we are working in Israel on autonomous vehicles, but not in a way that will scrape aside the big problems and start actually new problems instead. Because what we do have in the end, if we go back and rely on private cars, we get this. This is a photo from the entrances to Beijing. Because it became too polluted, then people left the bicycles, and the government created the cheaper cars, and that's what we have every morning. So we can't continue doing that. We have to start talking about new kinds of policies and changes that will not only improve the citizens, but will also change issues that have been highlighted by the pandemic. The difference between and the rich, issues of energy. When more people are at home, there's a need of much stronger energy. There's the need for different kinds of solutions. And if we utilize innovation without changing urban models, without changing urban policies, there'll be no impact. Or as Mayor Penalosa of Bogota, the previous mayor of Bogota, said, a developed country is not a place where the poor have cars, where the rich ride public transportation. So the question is, how do we do that? And how do we create these new policies? It has to be integration between what we use to work with spatial strategies, normal master planning, together with responsive management, database management, which includes dynamic plans, not robust and one-time plans, but dynamic plans that can change, fragmented cities, and collaboration between different sectors, and also balancing and continuing monitoring, so we can change these plans when situation change, such as this pandemic and other situations that will happen in the future. So for an example, if we're talking about 21st century cities, in the past, we looked at the city as one city, and we managed the whole of the city. Even though the communities were different, we managed them in the same way, in the same regulation, in the same system. But since we know that each one of these communities are different, then we have to create different tools and different rules for these different communities. And we have to create interaction between them. But these interactions, again, not necessarily we have to look at them as the way we did before. So each one of these, again, each one of these communities that has to have their own way of working, their own unique solutions, and their own kind of governance to do that. And we can do that. We can do that with tech. We can do that with data, because data enables us to do these things. So we can change also our access or mobility needs by creating peer-to-peer supply of services within the community. Shared mobility doesn't work that much because of trust, because I don't know who the driver is going to be. I don't know who they are. So shared mobility within the community can work. We can decide on what is the demand and what is an agreeable demand of services. Where do we want public transport? When do we want it to be? What kind of budget do we have to do? And again, there's transparency, and that's all to do with tech and data, and in an instance also, sometimes also blockchain. And I know we were talking today instead about blockchain. So blockchain can also be part of these answers. So going back into mobility, the question is the whole issue of mobility tech. Does that really work within cities? And does it do the real change? So we know that Uber has been talking about do it first and ask forgiveness later. Let's put in the Ubers and the Limes. And again, Ubers and Limes, not necessarily these companies, but the kind of companies we're talking about. It was spoken in the past that these kind of solutions will reduce the need to use private cars, but we know for a fact not only that the amount of cars hasn't been reduced, but actually now we have these cars, but we have additional ones, and we have also people using e-scooters are now competing with people that are walking on the street. And the pandemic also showed that the gig economy, people that are using or working as Uber drivers in their spare time, and they bought new cars to do that, since they don't have any social backing and they don't have a pension and so on, the pandemic basically left these people poorer, and we see that in the huge amounts in developing cities, developing world. So we have to develop a new kind of innovation, and we see a difference between industrial innovation and civic innovation. Industrial innovation, it's 80% tech. We have a great idea, and then maybe we'll apply policy on top of that. While civic innovation, it's 20% tech, but 80% policy and understanding the problem itself. So in the industry, we want to disrupt current models. In civic innovation, we want to resolve an urban stress. And again, when we're talking about the pandemic, this immediately highlights this problem. And in two projects we are working on, for an example, these are two cities. One is Jerusalem, one on the left, and another one is Holon. It's a medium-sized city in Israel. we're talking about mass transport and good expensive solutions. What happens are, because certain areas, because of typology, because of historic aspects, because of the sections of the roads and streets and so on, many areas are left out of these solutions. So you'd have the poorest areas that need public transport, the areas in gray where the areas where all the poor people live, they don't have any access to these solutions, and they're further than 1 kilometer away from these solutions. And we see that in many places. It's exactly the same thing all around the world. So I want to show one example of work we're doing for one of the poorest cities in Israel. It's called Ofakim. And we were asked to be part of a urban strategy to solve the many aspects of the city after a master plan was finished. So on the left-hand side, this is the existing city. It has only 30,000 people, but this new plan is going to add another 60,000 people, and 30% of these people in the city are ultra-Orthodox people that are very poor, but also not connected digitally. And we were asked to connect the old part and the new part, and also to reduce the cost of living and the reliance on private vehicles. The reason for that is also because that city has the lowest amount of private vehicles per population. And also the cars are the oldest, so we also saw that as an opportunity. So we created 5 main urban strategies for improving sustainability and the shared economy, accessibility, walkability, new economic growth, local innovation, and networks. And I'm going to talk about walkability and accessibility, and I want to show you just how we need to integrate innovation with public policy, with policy and planning. And you see the target we created there is a very impressive one, which was approved by the mayor. We wanted 50% reduction in private vehicle travel and access to public transport 24/6. Reason why it's 24/6, because we have ultra-Orthodox that don't use public transport on a Saturday, and therefore they didn't agree politically to have it 24/7. And also have maximum access to open spaces, maximum 200 meters from their houses, and open internet for all, so they can work and also learn and so on from far. So we created a mobility strategy which is based on not one solution, but a wide range of solutions. And each one of them has a potential for different areas of the population and different kinds of population, different cultures. And together, we can create a very serious reduction. Now, the right-hand side of this graph is the highest reliability without changing policy and without needing very high amount of tech and innovation. And on the left-hand side, this is the new innovative, and the larger the bubble is the largest of the potential. And what we did, we created this circular route that connected the old and the new, which will be using autonomous shared vehicles. In the beginning, it will be just electrical shared vehicles, and in the future, it will be autonomous when the regulation will allow. And the idea was to integrate open space and innovative work, play, and live one next to another. And you'll see this is the new part and the old part connecting to one another. But again, this is not enough, because we will only get access to those that are close to this rule. So it's as people that live in the Middle East know, talking about 500 meters of walking is very good in Northern Europe, but it's a nightmare when areas are very hot. So we're talking about creating access to mobility or to shade and so on in a maximum of 200 meters. So basically, so we'll be able to make sure that people will leave their private car and actually use public transport. So we did it in 2 ways. First of all, we created in this route, which you see in red, this is where the shared autonomy 24/7 transportation by demand will be utilized. And we created the network of open spaces, a network of green spaces, which connect all of these together. And the Deferred Race is 1 mile. or so 1 kilometer, which again is pretty far, but it's shaded all the way. So that answers to many of the users, and also public and private cars are only second. And in this green lanes, we have bicycling, electrical scooters, and walkability. In each one of these different areas in the community, we also implemented community co-working spaces, so people can work 500 meters from their house, integrated into schools and the public buildings. So you don't have to have them as commercial spaces, but the idea is basically that even if you don't want to go today to work, or during the pandemic you can't work from home, you already have somewhere else to work from. The second aspect to that is also if you don't have access to mobility, if you don't have access to digital tools, the ultra-Orthodox in Israel don't use smartphones. So they won't have access to all these. So we integrated in strategic places Wi-Fi and community info nodes, so you can get also all the data in the public space. So what we did, we created an integrated plan from door-to-door mobility. What you see in the brown is the public buildings, and the purple is the commercial areas. And then we started, as I said before, with this ring road with autonomous and shared public vehicles, which are 200 meters, 400 meters away from one another. That means it's a maximum of 200 meters to get from every place around that route to a stop. A public transport bus or train that is on that route to other places, to the other metropolises. And then we created a transportation by demand based on, you would use either your smartphone, or you would use the digital nodes, which I showed before, to order a public transport on a different kind of route. If you're familiar with VIA or other kinds of vehicles that do that. And this would be maximum 100 meters from where you are, or 85% of the population will have these public transport very, very close to them. And then these green routes will enable people that can walk or can use the electrical bikes to get to these places. We added to that a alternative route for private car, because we're not going to go against the private cars, but we added in ride and park EV charging places, so you can actually take your car, instead of entering the community, take your car, get outside in these places, and then basically use either public transport or rent a scooter. And the same thing also about electrical vehicles and so on. And the last layer was shared EVs within the urban fabrics. In each private building, multi-residential building, we had to have, we put 20% of the parking spaces, which have to be EV, and these EVs will also be shared among the buildings themselves. So if you do have to use a car to get to somewhere that public transport doesn't take you, then you can use that. Now, the other way to do that, as I was saying, the only way is to create a fragmentation. So we divided this community of 10,000 housing units into different sectors. Each one of them is about 700 units. And all of them also are divided again. So what we have a building of 10 families, which they know one another, again, collaborating together with 200 inhabitants or 200 families. These yellow and blue borders over here, and 200 people, or 200 families are the right size for people to agree to share the vehicles, to agree to share energy and so on. And in 2,000 people, it's the size that will enable already financially viable shared resources and infrastructure. And each one of these communities have their own dashboard and applications so people can say what demand of services they want, what kind of services they want, what do they need, are they happy with the services, are they happy with public transport, is public transport on the right location for them, is it problem about too many people and so on. And this again is managed not by the city, it's managed by the community themselves. Every 1,000 families have their own platform. In a nutshell, I will summarize with that, the only way to create sustainable growth in normal times, but especially in times of pandemic, we have to create regulatory flexibility that can also take into consideration these changes. We need to integrate data, policy, and flexible open spaces so we can fit these solutions for the different kind of communities, different kind of people that are there. And we have to create trust, sharing, and validation to enable us to monitor the success and change the solutions if these solutions are wrong, but also create this connection between policy, tech, and stakeholder engagement to create a behavioral co-ownership of these solutions. And only by doing that, the post-pandemic urbanism will create better access to services, to work, but also better well-being. So thanks for that. These are my details. If anyone wants to contact us, we're also on LinkedIn, and we'll be very, very happy to talk to any of you. Khalas, any questions?
Hello, Rafi. Thank you very much. It was a great presentation. So if there are any questions from the audience, please feel free to unmute your microphones, or you can type in the chat window as well. So I have one quick question. So in terms of this pandemic situation and post-COVID-19, what do you think is the emerging trend for mobility? Like you mentioned accessibility instead of mobility. So what will be the key emerging trends in the new normal? I know we have a different world now. So in the new normal, what will be the key emerging mobility trends?
Well, as I was saying, I think that urban mobility will have to change. If we want to have more people living in cities, if we want to have more density, then we have to rely much more on public transport. I think autonomous private cars will be a nightmare for cities. We have to talk about shared vehicles, the minimum of 6 to 10 people in every car. And that means we have to create the right policy for that. So we're talking about either public shared vehicles, or as I showed, a community that can actually enable other people to share between them. And for that, we will need to create trust within the community. We have to make sure that the community will agree to leave their private car behind. So I think the future again will be autonomous shared vehicles. In the end, the reason why it has to be autonomous because we'll have smaller vehicles and there's not enough drivers for that. And also we don't have parking and so on. So it's a big no-no for private autonomous cars, but we will need public autonomous. And on the other side, again, there is a need to create, to reduce the digital gap, because we're already seeing companies around the world, Microsoft yesterday, LinkedIn in the past, and also a big amount of other companies that said, if you don't want to work from the office, that's fine, work from home. But if you want to work from home, you have to have very strong broadband. And the more and more people that are using that, we need stronger and stronger broadband all the time. So 5G or 4G or any way you want to do it, we need a lot of fiber, we need a lot of solutions to do that. But also we do need places for people to connect. So even if they don't go back to the office, we need something that will substitute the sharing of information next to the coffee machine. The sharing of information, this networking is what we need to create growth. Therefore, we will need to create mid-distance places for people to meet. For one example, again, this kind of shared community working space, which we now already implemented in about 10 urban plans that we consulted in, not necessarily in the innovation districts, but within the community themselves. So you can leave your house and you can also connect and create networking with other people, so you don't have to go into the city center.
Perfect. Thank you, Rafi. Is there any other question from the audience, please? Okay, so I think there are no more questions. So thank you very much, Rafi. It was great pleasure in listening to your presentation, and you shared really creative ideas. So I wish you a wonderful day ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.